Okay, so what we're going to do is just ask each of the candidates. They're going to have 2.5 minutes each just to put forward their vision of the farming future for our area, and I am afraid I'm going to keep you guys to your 2.5 minutes, so I'll be timing you and waving my arms around if you go over. So shall we start at this end? We'll go the other way. And so we'll start with Arthur. Over to you, Arthur.
Hey.
I'm Arthur Bain, the Greens candidate for OXLEY. What's my vision for the future of farming? Accelerated climate change needs to be front and centre in our thinking. Food producers need to plan for, and where possible limit, the devastating impacts of extreme weather events. The fundamentals of successful sustainable farming are access to healthy water and productive soils. We need to protect waterways from chemical runoff, from fertilisers, herbicides and pesticides, and erosion caused by stock and the overclearing of land. We need to encourage diversification. Monocultures lead to disease and pest infestation, causing an unsustainable dependence on chemical inputs. Monocultures leave growers vulnerable to market manipulation and fads in consumption. When genetic material is privatised, food security is the hands of corporations, not communities. So I say no to genetically modified crops. Greens will invest in research measuring the impact of agricultural practices on the environment. Many end users now demand and pay extra for sustainably sourced products. Environmental costs must be factored into food production and distribution. My vision is mixed farming using organic and biodynamic principles, integrating crops for food and textiles, animals and forests to increase soil productivity, value adding to provide long-term opportunities for prosperity. We also need to educate consumers about the benefits of buying seasonal, locally grown products. The perfect zucchini does not have to be 175 millimetres in length, 40 millimetres in diameter, and available all year round. Banning junk food advertising on publicly owned assets and regulating advertising in children's peak viewing times is a beginning. Parents and educators work hard to promote healthy eating, but we're fighting millions of dollars of advertising and corporate donations from the fast food industry. So how do we create this vision? Let's start in OXLEY. Let's start in Gumbangyyir, Dunghutti and Biripi country. Create incentives for growers to use organic and biodynamic principles. Demonstrate how we can become the great green food bowl of New South Wales, now and into the future. Thank you.
G'day, I'm Tony. I'm the Labor candidate for Coffs Harbour. I live in Woolgoolga. I consider myself a good local. I've only lived here for a few years, but I chose to live here, and I love the place I live. I remember an old Italian migrant guy I worked with once said the same thing about being a good Australian. He chose to live here. My vision for farming, my introduction said I'm passionate about community. I am passionate about community, and my vision is a farming community here that we can all support, that we can all feel proud of, and that we can all walk out and be an ambassador for. And when we've reached that point, we'll know we've been successful. That's what my vision is. And how do we get there? There's conflict in our community. I do street stalls everywhere. I talk to people, and there is conflict between intensive farming and some people in the community. We need to accept that there's that conflict, and we need to treat each other with respect, with a bit of generosity and with a bit of honesty. And so what that looks like is listening to each other, not yelling at each other. Not selectively quoting statistics to justify your case, but actually looking at the research and saying, that's what this thing says, that's what this thing proves, where do we go from here? And it's about actually working with each other, and it's a not really old concept, and I said it last night at a different forum, it's about being a good neighbour. A good neighbour is respectful, they are generous and they do listen. And look, just something really personal that I need to do on that point in my 1 minute that I've got left is to say something to Gurmesh. A couple of weeks ago, Gurmesh, I gave an interview on TV and I said you're opposed to all regulation of the blueberry industry. Look, you're not, and I accept that. It was a sloppy way that I said it, and I'm sorry that I said it that way. I know you're opposed to some regulation that the community wants, but you're not opposed to all regulation, and let's be honest about it. Let's have a proper, honest conversation, and that's my vision. That's not so much my vision for farming, that's my vision for this community. Thanks, everybody.
Hi everyone, I'm Susan Jenvey. I'm the Country Labor candidate standing for the seat of Oxley, and I have been a farmer for the last 20 years. I'm a macadamia farmer from Valor, and I thought I might tell a little bit of a story about myself because there's been so many good stories tonight anyway. So I started off farming, and it was pretty neoliberal type of farming that I did. It was at a time in the 90s, and it was like get big or get out. That was one of the sayings people used to say, and we used to have another saying, make every nut count. So even though while we used organic fertiliser 90% of the time, we did use sprays. And then I was unfortunate enough, or lucky enough, however you want to look at it, to go through a market collapse. And believe me, I really feel for dairy farmers at the moment. It was not fun farming under the price it cost to produce it. So farmers do really like a floor to make your farming worthwhile. So after that market collapse, it went on for quite a few years. I went through a number of processes, spray-free farming, and I've really enjoyed my farm ever since. It's a much nicer place to be than all those chemicals that used to poke around the place. So one other thing I like to say as a farmer, you've got to not only know who you are, but where you are. So I farm on slopes on this clay red podzolic soil. It's traditionally a very leached soil, so we get a lot of rain, it runs over it, and it goes down into our creeks and rivers. Oh, already. Okay, I better get on to some of my policies then. So, you know, I am a lot about soil health. I do understand it, but I'm absolutely standing as a candidate because I want action on climate change. So I really think we're facing a systems collapse. Have a look at the fires in Tassie in summer, or the flooding in North Queensland, our drought, whatever. It's here. It's more of a process than an event. So as a Country Labor, you know, we're going to prosecute some of those have a special commission of inquiry on the Darling River for the fish kills and prosecute greed and mismanagement. We're repealing land clearing laws that are part of the ongoing degradation. We're repealing the IFO coastal intensive forestry laws if we can take government. We're instigating the Great Koala National Park as a carbon sink, and we're putting tourist processes over it. We're promoting clean and green food and wine trails on the North Coast, which includes the Mid-North Coast, which Josh might be happy about. We do talk to those things. I'd love to talk more. We want our extension officers put back into agriculture, and we want science and rigour on our farms. You going to knock me off? Okay. Well, hopefully have a bit more to say. I've got lots to say, sorry. A bit more to say when you ask some questions.
Hi everyone. I'm actually going to take a different tack and probably not talk about farming at all for the next couple of minutes, or I will make reference to it because it's not my specialty. I'm not a farmer, I'm a town girl and an ex-city girl, so I'm going to take my cues from your questions and try and answer those as honestly as I possibly can. In the meantime, I've asked myself repeatedly why I've put my hand up to do this. My sister's first question was, are you mad? And the answer probably to that is, what kind of mad do you mean? Actually, I am mad, or if you prefer, very concerned. And not just about what is happening to us here in Coffs Harbour, but what is happening to our agricultural lands across the state and across the nation. We've all been touched by the images of Menindee Lakes and the Murray-Darling river system, and the farmers who are having to cart water and feed for their stock. We've all been touched by stories of farmers being forced to accept coal seam gas extraction on their land and with no say in any of the decision-making process. We live in a time when we have the technology and the resources to maintain the viability of our agricultural land at the highest levels. We have the resources and the technology to provide high-quality agricultural products not only to our own community but on the global market. It's imperative that we protect the resource now and for the future. I like to think, like so many people, think that I'm not mad, well maybe I am, but I am very concerned at the behaviour of our leaders who will one day slap a mate on the back, offering up 100% support and then place a sharp instrument in the same location the following day. The adversarial approach of our parliamentary system permeates our society and contributes to the divisiveness we live with on a daily basis. There is in fact more that unites us than divides us. I'm concerned that over the last 30 years we've been unable to move this local community beyond 23% youth unemployment, concerned that our main street is filled with empty shops, and after 30 years of investment in local infrastructure we have made no progress. It's not a good image for us and it's disturbing for the people who live here. This morning's advocate carried the threat from one of our leaders of ruling parties that Border Protection may take funds from our current offer from the federal government to take steps toward dealing with issues associated with our roads. This type of bullying and scare tactics permeates through our society, causing distrust and conflict. It does seem we're unable to believe our leaders. We have the opportunity at this election to make a difference, to be a force for change. We can do this by electing an independent candidate to our state parliament. We have the opportunity now to give this region a voice. If we do nothing, it will be business as usual, and it seems to me that business as usual is not working.
Okay, good evening. I'm Stuart Davidson and I'm the candidate for the seat of Coffs Harbour for the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party. My family comes from Tenterfield, over in the New England. We were cattle grazers, cattle growers, not so much agricultural, but just lots of cows. No, we didn't do dairy, just beef. So I've had a connection with rural and regional New South Wales pretty much my whole life. I've worked up and down the coast from Newcastle to Grafton for community corrections for the last 12 years. So my immediate background in the last 18 years is dealing with crime and in that courts and police. And like rural areas aren't exempt from that. Rural crime's quite a significant issue too. But the shooters, fishers and farmers, we recognise the vital role that New South Wales farmers play, both state and national. Some of you guys probably heard this last night who were at the New South Wales Forum. Just, how many people in the audience are first generation farmers? That's 5 more than last night. I take my hat off to you guys because you're certainly stepping into an area that's very, very hard and it's a big slog. And what you said before about the average age of the farmer being 60, it's true. And you're a first generation farmer. Yeah. I can't call myself a first generation farmer because my family comes from rural. We've got a few head of steers on a property at Bucka. That's the extent of our farming, and try to grow tomatoes at home that kangaroos keep taking and stealing. Look, the farmers are the stewards of the land, producers of our food and carers of our livestock. Farming is the lifeblood on which every Australian relies. Farmers are on the brink of competing land uses, the mitigating urban fringe, inner city politicians, restrictive legislation, bureaucratic red tape, litigating government departments to add to these woes. We will always support the interest of farmers, and the Shooters and Fishers Farmers Party have a proven track record in advocating and delivering results for our farming and forestry sectors. Are you shutting me off? Right.
Everyone's had
I'll just
same time, so
one paragraph. A legislated right to farm policy that will give New South Wales farmers the security they need, knowing they will not be subject to nuisance lawsuits or harassment.
Okay. Thanks very much, Stuart. There'll be plenty of opportunities for Stuart, for all of you to talk when we get to the Q&A. So. Okay, now Jonathan.
Good evening, everybody. Jonathan Cassell from the Coffs Harbour Greens. It's wonderful to be here. Gumbangyyir, this is Gumbangyyir land. I do want to acknowledge that we are on the land of Gumbangyyir people. In terms of agriculture, I do have a history of agriculture, one form or the other. I have studied organic farming. I've grown up with farming families, and I feel a real connection to the land. I have in my own backyard garden, which I've actually planned directly off a plan which was about 10 square metres that could feed a family of 4, and that plan came out of post-World War II when people were starving and they realised they needed to build resilience into their communities. And so resilience is one of the things that I'm really passionate about building into our community, and the Greens have had a very firm foundation on sustainable agriculture. They've worked very hard to protect our prime agricultural land from mining, CSG, etc. So protecting our water also is very important. So we've got that very large picture around how we respect prime agricultural land and making sure we do the right thing. And if we look at the big picture, things like regenerative agriculture is something that I'm very interested about. Making sure that we are working with the ecology in the landscape, not just kind of forcing ourselves upon it. It hasn't worked, it's broken. The ecology is coming apart at the seams. Australia really, literally, when you look at the Murray-Darling, is actually falling apart. It's unsustainable. Cotton, etc., is not doing our service any good. But on top of that, we've got issues with regards to a duopoly in our market, our supermarket systems, which really are, driving the prices for farmers. So I would like to see some regulation go into and look at the food and grocery industry, and make sure that we have proper supply chains going right back to the farmer. But that's a big picture. What I'm also very interested to talk about right now in this last 30 seconds is developing market gardens. I've followed market gardens for a long time. I have read that, there's a Canadian market gardener, Fortier, who's literally professionalised market gardening. I would love to see Coffs Harbour become a world leader. We've got a great climate here, and I've been to the sage markets down at Moruya, and they've got a really wonderful system down there where they literally, it's busy, it's active, and they use online, they're starting to use online, systems to give farmers security that people can pre-order online. They can go to the market knowing that they've already got 60 carrots already sold. So for me, it's across the board, looking at the big picture, looking at building resilience into our community. We have the policies. The Greens have got the policies to make that happen. We're environmental. We're ecologically, balanced. And we support, obviously, healthy waterways and our community and making sure that land use conflict is minimised. Thank you.
Sally, Townley.
Thanks everyone for coming tonight. Thank you, Uncle Mark, for welcoming us. I think that was a great lesson in sustainability, some of the things that Mark Flanders talked about, the idea that thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of generations of people could exist on the same spot. And when we look at our the way that we're doing a lot of agriculture at the moment, I think we can't say that. I guess briefly, my background is environmental science and wildlife biology. Some of what we're actually at another farming forum last night, so some of these guys probably already half heard this, but and Louise, your examples of Moruya, and I think a great example or a vision of what agriculture could look like is, people that follow things like the real estate markets are looking at Tasmania going, wow, real estate there's booming, the economy's booming much more than any other part of Australia. And Tasmania is where the green movement really started. And so what I believe is happening is that some of the policies that were put in place even 20 and 30 years ago by those green influencers have now resulted in this situation where, they've got these amazing resources, they've been protecting their land, they've been protecting their water. Earlier governments in Tasmania wanted to sand mine Wineglass Bay. Now, who here hasn't got like a postcard or a Facebook photo of a friend that's gone to that place as a tourist? God, isn't this beautiful? Lucky we didn't sand mine it. And so what's happening now, people are going there because they can experience this kind of tourism, eating great food, great fish, great everything. And so it's promoting those small producers and those sort of micro transactions. And just briefly talking a little bit about our business, the Hearthfire Bakery, which my husband is the genius behind. And he's buying 2.5 tonnes of agricultural produce every single week. He tries to buy whatever food people bring to the back door. That's right, isn't it, Tim? One of our growers is here. And even, being able to order from growers to be able to say, can you put in a crop of eggplants for me? I'll buy them sort of when they come off. So I think collaboration, networking, being close to our farmers, not distant, those are the kind of things that can... add value to the farmers, and they need to be paid the right price for that and supported in that. The closer we are, there's how many people have looked at things in the supermarket and said, I wouldn't feed that to my kid. I wouldn't let my kid eat that. And what we want is the opposite of that, food that we are happy to eat, happy to let our children eat, happy for all of us to eat. Shall I stop talking? Yeah, okay.
Now we've got Gurmesh Singh.
Lucky last. Len already read out some of my work history, so I won't go over that again. Basically, I've been back on the farm full-time since 2013. And I can say I've genuinely experienced both sides of the working fence. I've worked in advertising, in skyscrapers, and I've worked on the farm as well. So why is agriculture important? Like, aside from feeding us and clothing us, agriculture also provides a lot of jobs and a livelihood for a lot of people on the Coffs Coast, thousands of people. In the last few years, my focus has been on helping to reduce the conflicts between farmers and the wider community. And since being elected as a Nationals candidate, there are people who've tried to link me to the worst aspects of our industry. As a farmer, I'm responsible for my farming practices on my farm. As an industry leader, I'm under the greatest amount of scrutiny. We've had people trespassing onto our farm to do God knows what. But also as an industry representative, I'm responsible for trying to improve industry practices. And I can say hand on heart that I've done more than anybody else. I've worked harder than anybody else to try and improve standards across our industry. How have I done that? Our co-op has privately funded 7 agronomists and field officers since late 2015. With an opening for 1 more if anyone's looking for a job. These people are working with the growers every day that I represented. So we've brought in specialists from North America. Geez, that went quick. We've also introduced commercial penalties for rogue operators. We've kicked growers out of our co-op, and we're working our best to improve the practices on all farms. I'll just back up what Tony said as well, just for the record. And I've said this many times in many places, I'm not against regulations for agriculture. Regulations are actually our competitive advantage, and they are the same here as they are for every other horticultural industry across the state. The biggest failings in this area have been around compliance. There's not enough cops on the beat to enforce our existing rules. We've also been let down by decades of poor planning. I'll hurry it up. I've also met with the Minister for Primary Industries to lobby for 2 more DPI extension officers here in Coffs Harbour that we haven't had for nearly 30 years. Let's fix the issues. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Agriculture is too important for Coffs Harbour. Our region's blessed to be able to grow a lot of different types of food. We've got beef, dairy, milk, macadamias, avocados, timber, fish. I think there's a lot of potential in this area. The agricultural industries are very important. Thank you.
very much, David.